Good afternoon, it's Dr. Greg Emerson up in far North Queensland in a magical pixie cacao forest. I'm here with Yahdo, who owns the North Queensland Chocolate Company, famous up here in North Queensland of Australia. And I was telling Yahdo today, while we're having a tour of all these cacao forests, that I was watching the Tom Brady documentary last night. And Tom Brady, of course, the famous NFL gridiron American football quarterback, who's now 44 years old. He's been playing American football since he was, I think, 19 in the NFL. He's won the competition 7 times, mainly with the New England Patriots and last year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I was watching the documentary, and despite being 42, 43, he's still getting coaching on how to throw the ball, and he's always learning, always trying to learn more and perfect his technique. And he also said too that he looked after, he's famous for his attitude towards health and foods, and he's always trying to improve his body because he said his body is his asset. And of course Yahdo and I would agree with that. We'd probably put body, mind and spirit as our asset as well, and our connection to nature. So it was nice to see that, but he's always trying to get better and learn more. And I was watching some of my old videos on cacao that I've done in the past, and I talked about how the cacao plant, Yahdo I think they call it, originally in South America, has been shown to have these remodeling cells, these progenitor cells of the endothelium, where the cacao is able to remodel the surface of the endothelium of our arteries, and also shown to have a similar effect to ACE inhibiting medications, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibiting medications. But just wandering around these forests today with Yahdo, I've learned so much more about the cacao plant and its history and the magic behind it. So I'm really grateful to have him here today to run us through some of the stuff. So Yahdo, we've just had a look at your area of basically wild cacao that you have near Port Douglas and now in the Mossman Gorge. First of all, I just mentioned wild. I'm not really walking through, particularly on the first farm, a plantation. It was more like your cacao trees are just growing randomly in the bush. What do you see the benefit of kind of having it wild rather than, more like a farm structure?
Well, apparently the taste is better. They've done scientific tests on it, and they say that the taste is superior. I think that has to do with the shade, and that when you're doing it in an ag situation, you've got the rows and all of that, which looks good and makes it easy to harvest. But as far as the way that nature is, it's not emulating nature, which is what I'm more drawn to emulate what nature is. And we're trying to create a cacao natural forest, and it seems to work near Port Douglas. And here we've got them in rows. There's a good canopy now over, so they're going good. But I still think that when they're in a more natural environment, the energy of it is phenomenal.
You also, we noticed, had a lot of companion plants, a lot of banana trees there, tulsi plants. Why the companion trees and plants? Why do you incorporate that in your kind of forest?
It's an energy thing there. For instance, the tulsi that you talk about, that's the sacred basil. We've got the wild varna mainly growing through there, and they're like the nurse herb of fruit trees, and they look after the trees. If their energy isn't up to scratch or something's going on there energetically wise, it also helps with the bugs and that as well. It's a phenomenal plant, the tulsi. Most people will know about tulsi.
Yeah. I carry a little bit around with me, even at work now.
Yeah,
why the bananas?
Originally the bananas were there to give shelter first off to the cacao.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and now the bananas are just feeding us so abundantly every day. We were going to slowly take them out, but I haven't got the heart to take them out now because they're just been feeding us.
To taste.
Yeah.
I'm also really impressed by, obviously you're in far North Queensland where you get a lot of, I mean, it's 4 metres of rain a year up here and it's very warm, but I see that you also use irrigation from a natural spring and the Mossman River. What do you see are the benefits of using these natural water sources for irrigation rather than perhaps, pumping it from other sources?
Straight from the source, it's got the energy, it's got the flow form going through it, phenomenal, and there's this very little contact of the electrical pollution as opposed to what the natural electricity is around. And water being one of the best conductors of electricity, you really want that to be as pure as possible. And that feeds, as you know, all through the tree.
So the cacao plant itself I find fascinating. So this is a cacao bean?
Pod.
A cacao pod.
Yep.
And we broke one open before. And this is what really blows my mind, what's inside it. Now, it's half empty because we've eaten most of it. So what really amazed me more than anything was this white stuff on the outside, which I didn't know existed. And this is called the cacao nectar.
Yeah, the proper pronunciation that I was given was cacao.
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 Okay, I can do
it's
that.
Like an H in there, and that's the nectar, or what we call the nectar of the gods. That's the pure form of it. Yeah.
Right, and it's phenomenally sweet. It tastes a bit like I think you said to me it tastes a bit like a combination of pineapple and lychee.
Lychee, yeah. And then as it sort of goes through the body, you start getting all these different tropical tastes as well. It's phenomenal. It just goes straight into the heart, and then all of a sudden you actually feel it emanating out. It's an amazing feeling.
Right. And in fact, we think perhaps that when they talk about cacao being food of the gods, that it was probably the nectar that they were talking about, because obviously when you suck off the nectar and you're left with the cacao bean itself, the cacao bean straight out of the plant doesn't taste that good, but the nectar is phenomenal.
Yep.
And you actually are one of the few people in the world who actually utilize the nectar. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when we get the beans, you need a big harvest for the nectar. We put it into a vat, and then when I was first shown this, I was told that the beans will sing. And of course, okay, they'll sing. So I'm sitting there thinking that there'll be something happening, and you're not really expecting it to sing. And then all of a sudden you hear this dripping noise, but it's a totally different, because of the viscosity of it. It just sounds, it's hard to explain. It just touches the ears in a different way. And all of a sudden I started tearing up because I could actually hear it sing. I said, okay, that's what they meant. It's actually going to work. Because at that stage, I didn't know that any of this was going to work. I was only in a meditation that I was told that how to prepare it to get the best benefits from the nectar. So yeah, it was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I can't wait to get a bottle off you. And in fact, you were saying to me that probably this is how chocolate was developed, because these plants are native to South America, South and Central America.
Yes. Yeah.
And where you think, and this certainly sounds right to me, because actually to make chocolate you have to ferment the beans, correct? So you're thinking that perhaps people were so enamored with sucking off this incredible tasting nectar off the side and then throwing the beans on the ground, and they're naturally fermented, and then someone's come along and grabbed a whole lot of them and gone, wow, that tastes a lot different to the beans straight out of there. And chocolate was discovered by, actually a side effect of having the nectar.
Yeah, I think what possibly what I was shown was that the chosen people, the good part of the tribes, they were able to have the first lots, and then any of the slops or whatever, they could have it. And then it was just put into piles, and then somebody found out that, well, hang on a second, that tastes a little bit better that it's been sitting. So I think it was the nectar that was the actual true nectar of the gods first, before it was a food of the gods. And like humanity usually throws away the best part of whether it's wisdom or knowledge or anything, and just takes the what we think is the obvious.
And how does the fermentation process, what happens with the fermentation process that makes the beans go from tasting kind of like a slightly sour walnut to tasting like chocolate? What actually, is it more sugars that are produced by
Yes.
the fermentation process?
Yeah, and then there's a chemical process there. It's not most people think that it's the roasting of beans that gives it its flavour. It's actually, when you roast, you're actually burning.
Right.
So we don't do any of that at all. It's the way that it's fermented, and there's a special aroma that you know as soon as it gets to that smell, that's when the ferment is at its peak and will do its best for the bean.
And so the other thing I really like about your cacao beans and cacao or chocolates is that you sun dry the beans.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, I'm obsessed about the health benefits of sunlight and the power that it brings and the life that it brings. That there is no life without sunlight. There is no life without photosynthesis, and how plants produce the oxygen for us, and we produce the carbon dioxide that the plants need to make glucose. I think it's just a phenomenal, philosophy of life, how nature makes it all work together. So what comes first, the sun drying or the fermentation process?
Ferment.
You ferment it first. So you basically take the bean, take off the nectar, put that in a bottle for us, great, and then you ferment the bean.
Yep.
And then you sun dry it afterwards.
Yes, there's got to be a special process then, where you've got a special way of washing them. So yes, it's the fermentation first, and then the drying, sun drying.
Okay. Now the other thing that you found when I met you the other day at the Port Douglas markets, the other thing that you really blew my mind about was the difference between the cacao bean that you're selling sun-dried in packets and what I've traditionally been using, which is organic cacao powder. And I didn't realise that I was missing out on a lot of the magic. So can you explain to me the difference between, buying your own cacao beans and grinding them down versus buying cacao powder?
Okay, cacao powder has had the oil taken out of it, and the oil is the messenger. That's what just helps distribute this amazing substance through the body. When you take that out, that's the cause of a lot of heart palpitations, migraines. That's why a lot of people feel that they're allergic to chocolate. I used to be.
Right.
I loved chocolate, but I couldn't have it. And then,
Right.
a long story, then I tried doing what I was shown. I pigged out on it for almost 4 weeks to make sure that it wouldn't
Right.
give me migraine, so that we could offer something that was actually good for people. Not even the slightest migraine at all
Right.
from it. So.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. It's why I like putting ghee in my coffee as well, because the slow absorption. We now know the health benefits of good, healthy fats, and one of the benefits for me having it in my coffee is that I don't get that sharp rise in caffeine. I get a very slow rise because of, and also the medicine of the coffee. I mean, Ayurveda for 5,000 years has used ghee as a way of increasing the absorption of the medicine from food into their cells. So that's what you're telling me, rather than taking a part of the plant. And again, that I write about that all the time, about how that nature puts all these things together for the entourage effect, and by minimalising it, by pulling parts out of the plant, you're reducing the medicinal effect that nature would give us.
Yeah.
So I really like that you have distinguished between cacao powder and buying the cacao beans. So, the other thing I really like too is that one of the problems with a coffee bean is that it seems to get mouldy very easily. And yet cacao seems to be very resistant to mould. When we've just been walking through these cacao forests and there's no mould, it seems to be something very special about the cacao plant, that it seems to be resistant to moulds.
Yep, yeah, it is. It does get, there's a couple of diseases that it does get, because it's in a very shaded environment. But yeah, basically it is very resistant.
Okay.
And there's very little that'll actually attack it till we do have the white-tailed rat up here.
Right, okay.
which loves to feast on it.
All right, so finally, tell us what magic is involved in getting your sun-dried. You sort of talked about a solar oven. How does that fit into the process? Is that nothing
Nothing
that's
to do
separate?
with it.
Okay.
No, that's how I cook rice.
Okay, you cook rice in a solar oven. Yeah, well, I'm about to go and see this solar oven. It sounds good to me. Tell us what magic is involved in the process of getting this raw cacao bean into beautiful North Queensland chocolate. What are the steps that you go through? So first of all, there was the fermentation. Second was the sun drying. Now we're left with beans. What do we do with those?
Yeah, if they're dry, then they're put away, airtight containers, and we just slowly do the choice of grinding. Get a batch grinded. It usually takes anything up to 7 days to grind the chocolate. It's very slow grind. We also use the Gayatri mantra as part of the whole process, and that's been going for over 20 years. So it's not just...
No, not all companies do that. It's just unique to yours.
Yeah, because it's too hard.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea. I mean, we all know that talking, singing to the plant does make a difference. So I love that about that you've done that with chocolate.
And I think that's the biggest difference to it. It's the energy, not the, I'm no greater than anybody else, but I actually living as close to a holistic life as possible. So we're using the energy of the Gayatri mantra and making sure that we don't get caught up in television or anything like that, so that we can offer something that's truly from nature, and every part of the process has come through in that way.
And so, I mean, obviously when I tried to grind it, it came out a little bit lumpy, but you tell me it takes 7 hours of grinding to get it smooth.
Oh, 7 days.
7 days.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, 7 days. So what happens after that? I mean, or is that chocolate now?
No, then it goes through the process of breaking down the crystals, which we call it, they call it tempering. I've got another word for it. But so with chocolate, it does have the crystals in there. So it's scientifically proven that there are crystals in there, very beneficial. They break them down, they get broken down in the grinding process. Then in the tempering process, there's 3 different temperatures. We don't do the traditional temperatures, but there are certain temperatures that keep it below the threshold of it being cooked. So it then repositions the crystals so that in the normal type of confectionery chocolate, it will snap.
Yep.
And that's what most of the chocolatiers are looking for, the snap, and that's what gives it its supposedly great durability.
Okay.
Ours, it doesn't snap as, and there's a reason for that too, because it's very hard for the snappy one to be absorbed by the body, whereas the way that we do it is a lot easier to absorb.
So yours are more of a soft break rather than snap.
Yeah, it's in between.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, if it's too soft, then of course it won't stay in the block. And in the sacred ceremonial chocolate, there's no tempering at all.
Do you sweeten it at all?
Some of them we do. We
Right.
do 70%, 80%, 90%, and 100%.
And what things do you sweeten it with?
Coconut flour nectar.
Right.
I also do a type of chocolate where I grow the sugar cane. I do the process of getting it down to the sweetener, which it still retains its green, so it's got the phytochemicals in it.
Okay.
So it's still got the beneficial stuff in it. That's an extremely long process on top of the long process of doing the chocolate, but it's still well worth it.
So that's a pleasurable experience, but medicinally you're going to get the same benefit by having the ground down cacao fermented dried beans.
Yes.
Or do you think there's more medicine added in the processing into chocolate?
So long as it's done very carefully and very slowly.
Right.
And the grinding doesn't burn it at all. Because what happens with the beans is you won't be able to grind it totally down.
Oh, okay.
So there's not this full mix. We'll get an incredible benefit from just the bean itself.
Right. But you might get more benefit by having the ground down chocolate because it's more able to be assimilated into the...
It can be assimilated, yeah,
Right.
yeah, a lot easier.
Okay.
Yeah. But in the process then, see, this is an interesting part because the bean hasn't been processed, you'll get slightly different benefit from the
Okay,
the
so
chocolate
good to have
itself.
both.
Yeah.
Why
yeah.
limit ourselves?
Yeah.
Be limitless.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also love that you use coconut sugar. I mean, I've always said that if I had to live on a deserted island for the rest of my life, I'd take with me some colostrum, some oysters, and coconuts, because I just think that coconut is such a magic plant that it takes sunlight and uses sunlight to convert ocean water into coconut water. I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't invent that. It's just so much magic involved with that process. The fact that you're using coconut products in cacao just really excites me. Have we covered everything? I think we've covered. Anything else you want to tell us about the cacao plant? Because you've renewed my love of this plant.
Ah, okay. Well, actually, we won't waste the beans. Do you want to take those beans out? There's numerous medicinal qualities in the actual pot itself too.
Oh, is this what you want me to do? Just dig my big fingers in here and pull all these beans out?
Yep. With your consciousness. Oh yes, coming out.
Oh, I don't want to waste any.
That's okay. Okay. So what we have here.
How good is that?
Different parts on the inside of there is another very medicinal part. Extremely good for the hair too. So it's got those types of qualities.
Right.
Good for the skin. But these parts in the middle, excuse me.
You can do anything. We're in a cacao pixie forest. You can do anything you like.
Okay, when it's dried out, does that look familiar?
I should say yes, but I don't know.
Central nervous system is absolutely phenomenal, exceptional for that too, sending through the message, which is what cacao is.
Oh yeah, so what's that called? That's called the principle of, you were telling me about with the bunya nut.
That the bunya,
It's the
the
principle of where the plant is similar to the organ that it...
Yes, yeah, that's...
I can't remember the name of it, but of course there's the bean, which looks very much like a heart with the aorta coming out of the top. Even see the different ventricles in there. So that's, it's funny when you told me about that, and I was thought about my two previous videos. So we've gone from, endothelial progenitor cells, ACE inhibiting medicinal effect, then to opening up, finding this amazing bean inside covered in this incredible nectar, and then you get down to the bean and it looks like a heart with the aorta coming out of it. I mean, you couldn't write that book. It's so amazing.
I'll grab that one. I'll show you. Show the duodenum.
Oh yeah, we've got a duodenum.
Well, it's not quite, but you can see the duodenum. If I took it all out, it's just going to fall apart.
I mean, this looks like a gut.
Yep. Yeah, exceptional for the gut, the whole thing.
Great for the heart, great for the gut.
Yep, and for the brain.
And for the brain.
Exceptional.
And for weight loss, as I've worked now with cacao and weight loss.
That one will have a slightly different taste too for you.
I've got to get through the neck with these ones first. All right, Yahdo, that was amazing. As I said, you really reignited my passion for this plant, which I think is such a gift to us and such a source of health. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your tour. That's North Queensland Chocolate Company. Can't speak highly enough of it, how they've embraced the concept of sunlight and the entourage effect of plants that I always talk about. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your expertise. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. It's an honour. Thank you.